I'm Jake Sanderson.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into a very special Draft Day live edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. We are joined by two very athletic guests, Scott Wheeler, Ian Mendes from The Athletic. Thank you for doing this, fellas.
Mendez's athleticism was on display at the golf course yesterday, I was told.
No, that was our we have Jesse Granger who covers Golden Knights for us. Hit a drive that was 408 yards.
Yeah.
So his athleticism was
How'd your game go?
I shot. My goal was.
I feel like you'd have a good short game.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Like, no, just what does that mean?
Not more accuracy instead of power. Like you're a precision guy. Detail oriented.
It's a great save. So my goal yesterday, I usually shoot in the 90s, like 95. Like I'm not a great golfer, but I'm okay. Like I break
100.
Yeah,
solid.
But new course, rental clubs, all that. I said my only goal was to shoot lower than the temperature.
Nice.
And it was 101, and I shot 100 on the button.
There you go.
49, 51.
And when you're in doubt, you can just use the feels like to give you a little extra
Exactly.
cushion.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I thought you were brave because it is disgustingly hot here.
Yeah, but I golfed last week in Ottawa, and it was 43 with humidity.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same. Here it's dry.
I prefer the dry heat big time.
Yeah.
I'll take dry heat any day. There's about to be a lot of heat with the NHL draft coming up this year. And we're already getting a lot of movement. Do you guys think there's going to be even more trade movement? We just heard the Habs moving up.
Yeah.
How we feeling about a little more movement before things get going?
There's going to be more, maybe not before things get going, but there's going to be more on the draft floor this year, which is a departure from last year when we had zero trades in round one. So no, it's been, from everything I've heard from scouts, there's a lot of teams that want to move up. There's a consensus really top 15 group that we've talked about all year, but there has also emerged and I think this plays into why the Sens or why the Habs moved up. There's a consensus top 21, 22 as well. So I think the Habs were trying to angle to get into that group and get one of those guys.
And I feel like this is the kind of draft where as things start trickling down and, there's a random pick thrown in, teams are really going to get excited about either trading up or trading back because there's just so much value. And Scott, this, there's so many different tiers where teams probably see, okay, we're not going to target one guy if we trade back because that's when it gets a little dangerous. But if you're like, we still got 4 of our guys that we like, trading back would be a great option.
And this year in particular, you've also got teams at the top that don't want to be there.
True.
You keep hearing about Buffalo
New
and New Jersey and Ottawa, obviously. Like these teams want to get better. So there are teams that are clear. Quote, we talk about buyers and sellers at the trade deadline. I think there are sellers in this sense of that the Buffalo Sabres don't feel compelled to have to make a pick at 10 or 11. They've got an excellent prospect pool. They've got a young core. So the idea of them, they've already obviously moved back now once with San Jose yesterday. They moved from 11 to 14. I could see them even trading that 14th pick. I could see the Chicago Blackhawks looking to move up again, even though they've already moved up from 20 to 18. I could see that 34 pick trying to get into the first round. There's been a lot of talk about some of those teams trying to continue to make something happen.
The hot button.
I hate, you guys know, I hate talking about trades with the draft because it's the number one question we get and it almost never happens. But this year,
mock trades.
Yeah. This year feels unique that way.
Ian, would you like to announce Steven Stamkos to the Ottawa Senators? News coming out this morning. The Tampa Bay Lightning will not be re-signing their captain before July 1st.
Yeah, I saw that. But I was saying to Wheeler earlier, like, you remember 2016, we went right down to the wire. I thought this was going to be the same thing 2.0, but I mean, Don Meehan saying to Pierre LeBrun, he's going to be a free agent on July 1st is a pretty strong statement. And I wish, look, Ottawa would be an awesome, like, he's exactly the type of guy you'd love in that program, right? Because of his age, his pedigree, all that stuff. They don't have the cap space. They don't have the, right?
He's going to Detroit, if anything, right? The connection with Stevie Y, it just makes sense. They need a top 6 centerman. I know, Pilsy. I know.
You know,
He might be a winger now, though, too.
Yeah,
I think people need to sort of wrap their heads around that. That Steve might be a winger for the rest of his career.
Yeah.
A little Giroux style where it's like he's still taking face-offs, but once play gets going, he's on the wing. Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, that shot, that's not going to age out very quickly.
No. You know, my fear is, as I'm sitting here in Vegas, Steven Stamkos is going to be a golden knight on Monday. Doesn't that just feel like, wow?
They would do that. Yeah.
100%.
Talk about a team that doesn't have the cap space, though. They're hurt.
But they just
I
do
know.
it.
They'll
They just-
figure it out.
And obviously, they have to draft a player with the first round pick and then trade him immediately.
Those are the rules.
Vegas Golden Knight way. Scott, I wanted to ask you about this with the San Jose Sharks moving up to pick 11.
Yeah.
How good are Cole Eiserman and Macklin Celebrini going to be together? I mean, that's Cole Eiserman's music, is it not?
So I actually included in my mock draft, I had an NHL scout who doesn't work for the Sharks, so it's not a direct source, but I had an NHL scout, director of NHL scouting, actually tell me that they've heard that Cole Eiserman's not slipping past San Jose. The question I have now, though, is I think Cole Eiserman might have been there at 14. So yeah, you might be jumping the gun a little bit to move up from 14-11. If Cole's your guy, and if you're not going to take a defenseman, we know their pool is their 10 best prospects are all forwards other than Shakir Mukhamadullin. They desperately need a D. I think had they not won the lottery and drafted first overall, that they're a team that at 2 or 3 absolutely would have taken an Artyom Levshunov or one of the D. Now they add Celebrini, then they add Eiserman. If they add Eiserman, they don't take a Styan Solberg or a Carter Yakimchuk in that range kind of thing. Suddenly you've got a very crowded pool up front and nothing coming on the blue line. But I mean, good problem to have. They traded. We just talked about the Vegas Golden Knights trading all of their first round. They traded for David Edstrom, who was Vegas's first round pick a year ago, right? So they've got Philip Biestet, William Eklund. You go down the list. Will Smith. Now they're going to add Celebrini, potentially Eiserman. It's a really strong group there. I'm excited to watch that team. It feels like forever ago that they were. I mean, they were the best team in the league for a decade.
They
right?
were so
they
consistent.
They were a dynasty that never won.
Yep.
They were the closest thing, right?
These guys got close to Joe Thornton today.
Yeah, we
Speaking
saw
of
Joe
yeah.
Thornton today,
The
and
2010s.
we understand why he's called Jumbo Joe. That's a big guy for sure.
I found a fourth microphone. Hope it works.
All right, well, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, how's this? Good? Okay, let us know in the chat if my mic's too hot or what the case is.
Is this what you guys do? You have the audience dictate audio levels?
Well, no, it's not.
We are the people's pod. Whatever the people want and need us to do, we will do.
Right here. Like,
Yeah.
we're not missing the people. It is the show for fans by fans, and we obviously use your professional work all the time, and we love what you guys do. I feel like we're the people who are reading your work with a voice, and we like to incorporate everybody's voices. So it's kind of. I mean, we are fans at the end of the day. You guys are going to be in the media area tonight. We're going to be rocking Sens jerseys in 304. So that's what it's all about, man. And I'm just so excited for tonight. Like you guys are telling me, this is double digits almost for you drafts and you too, Ian.
Yeah, this is my 8th or 9th.
I mentioned this last night when we went out for drinks there last night. And I said the first draft I ever covered was I was a rookie reporter at Sportsnet. And it was the 2002 draft.
Okay.
To which the rest of you were like, I was in elementary school. I was like,
I was in elementary school.
Yeah. So, but I did the draft. So 2002, and I did the infamous one in Nashville because that's one of the great drafts of all time. 03 when you look back.
Big.
And to think that I did 02 and 03, and now I'm doing 2024. It's like
That's awesome. I think Scott, you're same age as us, right? 92?
I'm a 95.
No, 95. Yeah. They check your ID when you come in here?
They have checked my ID a couple of times here. The balding hairline should be a dead giveaway.
True. That's like, can we see some ID? You just take the hat off.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So do you want to go draft or free agency? Because it's so tight this year. It's almost like we got no time to breathe.
I want to stick on the draft.
Yep.
We're here in Vegas.
Oh, is it today?
We're at the Venetian. The Sphere is
no free ads.
Challenge somewhere around here. Ian, you had a chance to speak to Don Boyd.
Yeah.
What kind of impression do you get from him being the leader, but not the official leader? Like, how is that going to affect how they're making their choices?
It's interesting, right? Because I asked him, I said, when's the last time you ran a draft table? And it was, I think he said 2011 with Columbus.
Right.
So you're talking about, more than a decade in between running drafts. And Donnie is doing it just for, I get the sense, just for this year. And then I think they'll probably maybe look at what they're going to do with amateur scouting, whatever down the road, but they trust him. And, you know, I always think of the story, and our colleague Aaron Portsline did a great piece on this a few years ago when it was the 05 draft and Don Boyd was adamant. He's running Columbus's table. He's adamant on Kopitar.
Oh, what? Not Brian Lee?
No. And
wasn't their guy?
And Doug McLean was like, no, we're not going with him. We're going with Gilbert Brulé. And it was one of those great. So why I'm telling that anecdote is that I think, you know, Don Boyd is very much his message to me yesterday was all about collaboration and that we're going to go at this as a team. Yeah, I'm the guy that's, you know, the buck stops with me, but this is a collaborative effort. And I think, and I'd actually like to get your take on this, Scott, because, you know, Steve Staios is it's a rare general manager.
That was going to be my point. Steve is tapped in.
But an intimate knowledge of one league in particular. Yep. Do you think like there's two sides to it? One is like he's going to have tremendous intel, which could tell you all sorts of things, but that intel could also have a flip side. So, like, how do you think Steve Staios' connections, knowledge of the OHL plays into this pick?
I think it plays in. It definitely factors in with Zane and Sam. He would have scouted those players in minor hockey. He would know their families. He probably had recruiting meetings with each of them when he was in Brantford. There's got to be a relationship there with those players in a way that other teams lack. But I think, to your point, it can absolutely go the other direction. There was quite tons of finger pointing last year. Nick Bobrov, right? The director of amateur scouting with Montreal Canadiens, the only Russian director of amateur scouting in the NHL. He has to take Matvei Michkov, right? He knows Matvei Michkov best. And I think it actually worked against him. I think it was part of the reason that Jarmo Kekalainen didn't take Jesse Puljujarvi is because he knew.
And everyone thought that was going to happen.
Yep. Everybody assumed it was going to happen. And he knew from speaking with people in Finland that Jesse wasn't their guy and that Jesse didn't have what they were looking for. So I think, and Zane's a complicated player too, right? Zane's got some polarizing opinions. I don't know where they'll land on that. I've got a ton of respect for Steve. We've spoken about Steve. I've got a ton of respect for Steve. Developed a relationship with him. Obviously, they're in Brantford now, but when he was in Hamilton, they drafted some weird guys, some guys you wouldn't expect them to draft. I don't think it's a coincidence that Arthur Kaliev's name came up this week. Arthur Kaliev's a very unique player. There were a few players, Arbor Jacki, guys that they brought into Hamilton who didn't check the conventional boxes. And the previous Sens regime, we knew exactly what type of players they liked, right? Yep. We knew they liked
Yakemchuk at 7 if they're in charge.
Yeah, well,
big
I don't know.
Defenseman, right shot.
But they liked the athletes too, and that's the knock on Yakemchuk is how poorly he performed at both the combine in Buffalo and the on ice combine testing that they did at the CHL Top Prospects game. But no, I don't think he has a set mold necessarily in the way that the previous regime did, where it wasn't a surprise that they liked a Boucher or a Zach Ostapchuk. Like they liked those guys who got after it, were physical, two-way, athletic kids.
Our guy Pistol Pete Pedersen too. Same thing.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what Steve does with it because I think he's going to be highly involved, and it speaks to that collaboration piece where Don's in charge, but I think Steve's going to be more involved than people realize in the draft process. And
not just Steve, but I don't know if it was from you or somebody mentioning they're going to incorporate more analytics into their prospect scouting as well, which is a huge 180 from before.
And I think a part of that is Sean Tierney, who runs now the analytics, was with Staios and Andlauer for 4 years or however long he was there. So he again understands the analytics from a OHL lens, right? Like a junior hockey lens. And so, but it's really interesting to see. And I was down at their hotel the other day and you know, it's a bigger staff now. Like it's a bigger staff.
Proper staff.
Yeah. It's a properly run.
Do you remember the COVID draft, the Sens War Room? It was
talking about this the other day.
Yeah.
There's like 3 guys sitting around a table.
Yeah. It was, that was the year they had the remote shot, right?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, that's just it. So, okay, on that note, Marek Vanacker was drafted first round into the OHL by Steve Staios. Yeah. 39th overall, if that's a pick, would you?
I don't think he's going to be there.
Okay, so it wouldn't be we're reaching because we like the guy.
No, it's absolutely not.
Very much.
I think Marek's going to be a late first, and if not, he'll be third. Like he'll be one of those very first picks. The shoulder surgery does complicate it. He's not going to play until December of next year, so he'll miss development camp, rookie tournament, the start of the season with Hamilton. But he's a very well liked player. I mean, he's a 6'1" winger who can skate and works hard, and he's a well-rounded player and he can score. And there's a lot of love out there for Merrick Vanaker, so I don't think he'll be there at 39.
Okay, there goes that dream. We actually in our mock draft, Brock Otten selected him for Ottawa at 25. But Ian, we love a good narrative.
That's the
That's
kind
a
of
great narrative. Same GM. Has to be the first time in history a GM draft the same guy NHL OHL.
It'd be rare, right? Like the odds of you just being in charge of an OHL program and then so quickly being in charge
Timeline.
of an NHL program, it would be hard.
It'd be
Maybe it's happened, but
had they kept 25 though, that's the range. That's the range we're talking about. From there.
Eric, who's going to be, he's in Vegas. Eric's always in the chat. Soldier surgery, our type of guy. We got to trade up and down him.
Yeah, honestly.
Damn.
That one hurts.
Should we get to 7th overall? I feel like that's kind of, we're beating around the bush here. 7th overall. We know this is going to be wide open starting at 3. Feels like I'll have Shunov at 2 is a lock. Macklin Celebrini obviously at 1. What's an A+ draft? I already asked you that when we had you on the mock draft. You can check out that. I posted a video this morning. But let me ask you this. Who fits the Sens best based on what they have now? Like, would you take that into account at this point?
I think it's murky because we don't know whether what they have now is going to be what they have even days from now. Like, who knows what's going to happen with Jacob Chychrun? You go down the list, whether Thomas Chabot's a part of the long-term future, I think Ian can speak to this. It's TBD. Like, it's so
and that's JBD.
Yeah. So the more I've thought about it, I told you guys Zane Parekh was kind of my ideal best case scenario. Zane's 5th on my list. I love Zane. I think he's going to be a star in the league. I think he's the most talented defenseman that I've watched in 11 years of doing this. Wow. Honest to God.
That's big. That's huge.
From a skill standpoint, he's a more talented player than Brant Clark was at the same age in that league. There hasn't been anybody who's come through the, I mean, Rasmus Dahlin was special in the like he was breaking ankles in the SHL in his draft year. So maybe Rasmus Dahlin's at the
and he goes 1-1. So
special gifts, like the gifts are obvious. But we've talked a little bit about Zeev over the last 24 hours and even last night over drinks. Zeev's 4th on my list, obviously. So 4 or 5, those are the 2 guys right after that big 3 of Shunov and Demidov. Those are the 2 guys I'd be all over. Zeev's a lefty, so I think I don't know whether that'll come. You asked Don Boyd, I think yesterday, whether the handedness will come into the conversation.
I'm sure he had an analogy for you.
No, he didn't. His only thought was, we don't draft. He's like, don't ever draft for position and don't draft for handedness.
Yeah,
it's okay if you do your analysis, and if the 2 guys it's a tie, then maybe handedness comes into a factor. And he admits, right-handed shot D are a premium.
Yeah,
but it's not like we would say let's draft a right shot D because they're a premium if they felt like somebody else's ceiling was a bit higher.
Yeah. But to answer your question, I think Zeeb's ceiling is higher.
Yep.
Zeeb's my favorite player. He's going to be my best player available if he's there. The question is, I think Zane will be there and they'll have a choice to make on Zane. I'm not sure Zeev will be there at 7. So if Zeev is there, he'd probably be my pick, frankly.
Now, how
Zeev's he's special.
He's a winner.
Oh, yeah.
He's a winner,
special.
too.
How different do you think the Sens drafting strategy is now that they don't have 25th overall? Like, do you think like having that cushion of being like, all right, with 7th, we can go in this direction, and then with 25th, we'll go in a different direction. But now you don't have that till pick 39. Does that drastically change your approach drafting at 7, or you shouldn't even really think like that? Each pick should be individually worked on.
I think it's been a part of the conversation for teams. I think a lot of the teams that take a D in the top 10 this year, that also, because there are several teams that have 2 firsts, including a top 10 pick and then another later. I think those teams, you'll quite likely see them the way that this draft shapes out. Once those top D are gone, there's going to be a run of forwards. And as a result, I think you'll see the teams that did have 2 picks like the Sens did, a lot of them are going to take one of those D early, and then they're going to take Sacha Boisvert or Cole Baudouin or a Dean Letourneau. They're going to take one of the forwards that teams like in that 20s range later. So I think the Sens could have taken a similar path had they kept that pick. They could have taken a Zane or a Zeev or a Sam Dickinson at the top, and then they could have targeted a Cole Baudouin, who's obviously an Ottawa boy. Dean Letourneau's an Ottawa boy. It's interesting enough. There's two Ottawa kids that teams love in the 20s range, and it was the Sens were right there and quite likely would have had an opportunity to take one of those kids, and it would have been a worthwhile pick, not just because they're from there, but because that's the range where those two kids belong in. But
Definitely.
it's that part of it, I think, is a real factor for teams this year.
Top end of the draft, my biggest question is the 6 defensemen, the group of 6, really. Salayev and Yakemchuk, for me at least, a little step below the other 4, the Buyam, Dickinson, Perek, and Lev Shunovs of the world. How long is it going to take for all 6 to be off the board? Could we see 6 of the top 10, 12, 14? Where's it going to be?
I think you're going to have 5 in the top 8 or 9.
That's unreal.
Because Seattle, I'd be shocked if Seattle doesn't take one of them. Whoever's left, they'll take from that group. Seattle obviously hasn't used a high pick on a D yet. They took Matty Beniers, Shane Wright.
8th overall, by the way, 1 after the Sens. So we don't have to worry as much.
Ty Nelson would be their top D prospect, probably.
Riker Evans,
yeah,
maybe?
Riker Evans played
true.
in the league this year and did well in a third pairing role for them. Ty Nelson's a good player, but I mean, you're hoping Ty Nelson is the biggest, largest kid I've ever scouted at that age. Have you guys seen Ty Nelson in real life?
No.
Holy man, he is like that.
Built like a fridge?
It is unbelievable how big he is.
Well, Scott, my main reason why I wanted the Sens to draft him, and this is where our analysis differs from yours, is Ty Nelson shot a puck so hard the puck broke in half, and I was like, we got to have that.
That's
guy.
10 out of 10 strength.
He's a monster. I actually think it limits it when you get that big as a hockey player. It does limit you in some ways.
Dustin Bufflin.
Yeah,
type.
yeah, but he's not even built like Buff. Like it's just pure. Like he's rock.
Speaking of defensemen built like a rock,
EJ Emery.
Not only that,
The
EJ
opposite.
Emery and Sam Dickinson. How is it possible to have a body fat under 4%?
Sam's. I haven't followed up with the league about it. Sam's had to be wrong.
You have to move the decimal for me.
No, yeah.
That's-
Sam's a huge kid, and Sam carries around a lot of weight. There's a 0% chance that Sam's under 4% body fat.
Great.
That's crazy.
That'd be
EJ Emery.
unhealthy.
EJ Emery is at the opposite end of the spectrum from Ty Nelson, though. EJ
Okay.
Emery's one of the skinniest kids you'll ever see as a hockey player. He's skin and bones. You look at his legs and
What?
his ankle. Yeah, EJ is a twig.
But
he's
tested
rail
so
thin.
well at the combine.
Yeah, he's just
He
a
can
natural
Yeah.
freak athlete.
Didn't he
Wow.
jump out? You were there.
Yeah,
Didn't he jump out of the box?
There was no board left where he
Wow.
jumped, and long jump, same thing. He broke 2 records at the combine this year.
Going to North Dakota.
Going to North Dakota, they've actually North Dakota's got a really interesting freshman class coming in. But
Boisvert as well.
Boisvert.
Boisvert,
Big
yeah,
fan of
and
Boisvert,
Boisvert's another kid. Had they been at 25, I'm not sure he's going
We
to be
liked
there
him
at
a lot.
25, but he's another kid who was in that
And
range.
everyone who's watching this, been following Scott's work for all these years, you're not afraid to rank the undersized players that have a ton of skill high.
Yeah.
Max Swanson, is he going to get drafted? This guy's stats are hilarious.
Yeah,
He's like 5'6".
Mac's going to get picked. Teams love Mac. Alexander Zetterberg, same thing. Alexander Zetterberg's 5'7", 5'8", Swedish center who's going over to play at BU next year. I would expect that both Max Swanson and Zetterberg are going to be
Heck yeah.
4 or 5 guys, like around 4 or 5 guys. Mac's an unbelievable player. If Max were even 5'9", 5'10", we'd be talking about him in the top 50 for sure.
His stats jump off the page. And on that note, a question coming in on the chat from G-Man, Justin Poirier leads the queue in playoff
another
points.
5'8".
Why is he not getting first round love?
He's a 5'8" winger.
Yeah.
Those guys always linger.
But like what
the Q
compared
was
him
also
to, who's the guy from Halifax last year?
Jordan Dumais
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Similar at all?
Well, Jordan Dumais had 140 points, and Justin Poirier had 90. Now, Justin Poirier had, between the playoffs and the regular season, he led the Q playoffs in scoring and the Q regular season in goal scoring. He had 69 goals.
Jesus.
The number of players in the history of the CHL who've scored almost 70 goals combined in their draft year is a exclusive list of first round picks, right? So he's another one like Swanson, like Zetterberg, 5'8", 5'9", if he's lucky. Obviously Jeremy Poirier, his older brother, is a D prospect with the Calgary Flames. He's a good player. The challenge there is, he played on a pretty good team. Now he made that team better. It's the classic, like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? He scored a ton of goals. He was great in the playoffs. But the Q was a weak league this year, and I think teams are actually factoring that in this year more than they have in the past. I actually think the Q has been under-scouted generally, and I've made that case repeatedly over the years that teams don't spend enough time. Not a lot of teams have French-speaking scouts. I think it's a bit of an issue in the league, but this year you watch the Q, there was nobody in that league consequence, really.
Interesting.
So it was a real down year, and they've got a much better class. The Q has a much better class coming for 2025. They've got 3 or 4 potential first rounders in their group next year.
Awesome. So on that note, everyone's going to watch the draft tonight, 7:00. We'll have a live reaction episode afterwards, immediate reaction, I should say.
Well, hold on. Are you guys, how many drinks are we pounding back here?
We're not afraid. Everyone can go watch the postcast after the Jets Sens game this March, and
yeah.
we're
But
not
the
afraid
price,
to have
I'm
some
thinking
fun.
the price of beers.
Yeah, I'm going to factor that in.
Beer,
Yeah.
like a tall. I was on the strip walking by, and they're selling tall cans, and I think the tall can of Michelob Ultra was $17 US. So for anybody that's home in Canada, that's what, 21, 22, 21?
24.
I bought a
Yeah.
hamburger
Whatever, like-
from Fat Burger, which we have in Winnipeg as well, for like $10. I got it for $30 US for a hamburger and fries.
Oh, you didn't mention the fries last night. You
I
just
know,
said
I
you
know.
complained about a $30 burger.
Unbelievable.
The fries were in there
But
too.
then you do the conversion, and it's like that's $40.
Well, Ian,
Crazy.
you've seen how prepared Ross and I are, so we will also be prepared in that aspect.
Yes,
We'll
we'll
make
be ready.
sure we're prepared for that.
There's some Gatorades
There's
off
some
camera
that's how you're
here.
prepared.
I'm a big Gator Light, Pedialyte guy in Vegas. Make your jokes, say what you want. It'll save you. It'll save you.
Yeah, I got my migraine.
Who would joke about? Who would mock you for
Hydration, yeah.
Hydration.
As there's like a tall can of beer right next to it that he brought up to the room last
right.
night too. Awesome stuff. So it's gonna be a heck of a night. So what I was gonna ask you mentioned the Q a little bit weaker. What it's like the power rankings of the leagues that these kids are coming from. Obviously, the guys who are playing pro, it's a bit different, but like NCAA, USHL, all the Canadian junior leagues, and the European league.
And where does Norway fit into this? That's
Well-
what I really want to know. Where does Norway fit into this rankings?
I'll start with Norway. That league is better than I realized. I gave that league a hard time in my midseason ranking. I had a one-off line in my midseason ranking where I talked about it as a poor league. I had someone immediately from pro hockey over in Europe. One of the coaches in the SHL reached out to me and said, "You know what? We've played some of those teams in the Champions Hockey League, which is now a thing over there." And they compared it to Hockey Allsvenskan. Like it's not actually that far off from a Hockey Allsvenskan, which is a decent pro league. So
I've heard that it's really top heavy. Like there's a handful of really good teams, and then the rest of the league.
And obviously obviously Valorango, where Stian Solberg is one of those top heavy teams. So he was playing surrounded by good players. But those two guys are studs. As far as the leagues, I think frankly the NCAA and the USHL, if they haven't surpassed the OHL in terms of producing talent, but it's closer than people realize.
We talked, so many guys are choosing.
The CHL's
the
CHL's really concerned about it, I think. Now, Page, Fantilli, Owen Power are all CAA guys.
Yep.
They all did the Chicago Steel, the Michigan thing. I think part of that's the agency having a strong relationship with the Chicago Steel and with Brandon Naratto and the coaching staff at Michigan. So I don't think everybody's thinking about it that way, but the Q's losing a lot of guys. Boisvert, obviously, you just mentioned.
And the team drafted him, didn't?
They drafted him anyway,
really high.
Yeah, they drafted him in the first round in the Q, which is bold.
That's
and
tough.
Boisvert was already playing prep school hockey in the States at that time, so the lines were already there. Shattuck St. Mary's is obviously pulling Canadian kids on a consistent basis. It's something that the CHL, I think, is really, really cognizant of.
I feel like we don't hear about the Notre Dame prep avenue as much anymore.
No, not anymore. Obviously, Morgan Riley and some others played there. They're sort of coming up. The BC schools dominated out west now. Delta Academy and
guy Carson Latimer.
It's because Tej and Richie, Byron Ritchie's son, they played together at one of those academies. Most of the top players out of BC are playing there and spending $70,000-$80,000 a year to attend those. Like it's out of control out there. Obviously, the GTHL in Toronto comes with equal costs sometimes, but the cost is becoming like Caden Lindstrom. His mom was driving him 12-13. I did a feature on Lindstrom. His mom was driving him 12-13 hours through the Rockies to go to play games in Vancouver because it's the only way he could play hockey.
I need to show Ian.
And then his agency had to. Yeah, he's from north, right on the border with BC and Alberta. But his agency had to help him out to get him into Delta so that he could play at a higher level than AA. Right, like it's that part of it is, I think, a big problem as well for the sport long term.
Stian Solberg, how close is he to those 6 defensemen I mentioned earlier?
So that was my survey question this year in my scout survey.
Good question,
was
Scott.
sort of rank the 6D and then who's the 7th D for you. And had I asked that same question in NHL scouts at the midseason point, even after David Jiricek got hurt, David Jiricek would have been the consensus answer to be the 7th D.
Right.
Now I think Solberg has leapfrogged Jiricek. I think Solberg will quite likely go ahead of Jiricek, but both of those guys are going to go in the teens, I think. Jiricek, despite having a really tough fall, he was terrible at the U25 Nations in November. He didn't look good at the pro level. He obviously had 2 knee injuries and missed the second half of the season. People were so high on him coming out of the Hlinka last year that Jiricek's still going to be a high first-round pick. But people like Solberg. And I think I had a scout tell me, I think teams are getting carried away with how good he was at men's. Like, he played 23 minutes a night at Men's Worlds against NHLers and was excellent. But
Small sample size.
He was great for Vålerenga in the playoffs in Norway, and he was excellent in the second half. He was brutal actually at the World Juniors. I thought he was awful at the World Juniors for Norway, but that's always a tough team to play on when you're not surrounded by, like, David Reinbacher had a tough time on Austria. Marco Rossi had a tough time on Austria. It's difficult to stand out in that setting, but it's no, those guys. I think Solberg will be the 7th D, and he'll go in the teens.
Okay. Ian, I got a question for you. And then Scott, we've been, sometimes a little hard on you before.
Is that right?
In terms of your lists and all that. I just sent you
love
our
getting mad at
final
us.
draft rankings.
Did you?
So as I ask Ian this question, I want you to roast our list. What is the
This
word?
is your opportunity.
So what
Is your list a consensus list, or did you guys?
No. So we did our consensus list.
Okay.
That's what we did for our profiles as we counted up. Then as we were doing it, we had our own rankings where we would do 3 profiles. Then we'd slot them in based on what we knew of the people before.
Yeah.
All that. So then Pillsy made a list. I made a list. And then we averaged that list out to get
Love
the one
it.
you're looking at.
We
Math
like lists.
guys.
Yeah.
Big list, guys. Ian,
Yes.
what's the biggest storyline surrounding the Senators this weekend? A lot of people wondering about a Jacob Chikrin trade. Shane Pinto's still unsigned, which is asinine to me. What is it for you?
I think it's got to be, like, now that Allmark, like, nothing's going to touch Allmark, is
No,
it? Like,
nothing.
I think we can agree that.
And if it does, I'm going to get them.
Yeah.
We're his
Like,
bodyguards. He's my favorite player in the NHL, maybe
Yeah.
in history.
So I think the logjam on the back end is the storyline, right? Like, and there's only certain times on the calendar where, like, the soil is fertile for general managers to make a trade. It's the trade deadline. It's the window leading up to the draft and free agency, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Like, this league is so averse to doing anything outside the box. So it's like, we got to make our
Very
trades
scheduled league.
in this tight window. So I would say, if you're going to see a defenseman moved, I'm guessing that it's got to be today or tomorrow. Like, so I saw Steve Staios last night. It was like late
Is he
afternoon.
looking steady?
Steady Steve Staios, right? With a chef's hat on.
Yeah.
Martian's
Martian.
unreal. Eh? Those are
He's
so
cooking
good.
it up.
Did you
But-
see the one he did yesterday? I finished that, but too funny.
But I saw him and I said, "Hey, you got anything for me?" I
Right.
said, "Give me anything. Just give me a small nugget." And he's like, "I got nothing for you." He's like, "Really nothing?" He's like, "But our phone's ringing off the hook." He says, I think he said something along the lines of, I would say we're leading the league in calls.
Hey,
Is what he said.
Hey,
And
we're going for a
Hang
third
the
straight
banner.
summer championship right here. Eh?
yeah. So
League champ, summer.
my feeling is, it didn't sound like, but he's got a tremendous kind of poker face or ability to sort of not tip his hand in any significant way.
nice Vegas
So-
puns.
Yeah, exactly. So he could have been totally, like, BSing me,
Right.
And I don't know. But I didn't get the sense that as of like 5 p.m. yesterday that anything was like imminent or close. But I think this is the day where this stuff happens. And it's, you've been on these draft floors, like, it happens within an instant.
Everything could change with a
all
phone
these-
call, I've heard.
Yeah, that's right. Everything changed with a phone call. So I think that, to me, is the biggest story, is that they've taken care of the goaltending. If they can take care of one of the overflow of the left shot D, today's the day to do it.
Okay. And you just mentioned Martian and the Chef Staios meme. So I told him to make this one. Remember when Alfie got in the Hall of Fame? There was that really cuddly photo with Carlson.
Oh, I did see this. I
I
did see
told him to
The,
put Lena Solmark.
Lena Solmark
with the
with
nice
Alfie.
quad
quad
that's
touching.
hilarious.
Yeah.
So yeah, Staios, it feels like he's not a guy who's going to BS you, but at the same time, everyone's lying this time of year. No, is that as accurate as
It's
you
not
hear in
just
other
this time.
sports?
I think they lie all the time, and I don't blame them. Like,
No, of course
their
not.
job is to protect assets. Like, they don't necessarily, they're not compelled to tell the truth about, asset management or whatever. But yeah, this better than like
I do find you can read between the lines with most. It depends on your relationship with people, but I think they're more revealing than people realize.
Okay.
The combine's always great for that in particular, because the combine everybody's just had their final meetings. Everybody's loose. The list is done. They're trying to sort of get finishing touches on a few guys, but the combine, everybody's in the same place at the same hotel, the same rink in Buffalo. Everybody's very comfortable in that setting. And I think from then on, you speak to people, and nobody's going to tell you exactly who they're going to pick, but people, I think at that point, especially a team like Ottawa, where there are so many options, they can drop hints and you still don't have a feel. So especially this year with the number of D and the different handedness of the D and all of that. So it's tricky, but I think you can still figure it out. You can piece it together.
I love it. That's the beauty of what we do, where it's rumors. Every rumor that comes across our desk this time of year, we're going to act like it's 100% legit.
It's the agents that you can't trust.
Okay.
I always ask agents for a range on their guys for my mock draft, and I immediately almost always slot the players at the back of whatever the range is that they tell me.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
Ian, number of defensemen, if you had to guess, that will not be back from what we saw from the Sens last year.
So
it seems like the names, everyone except for Sanderson and Zub for me are available.
I would say that, Sanderson and Zub aren't going anywhere. I don't think Tyler Cleven's going anywhere. Clearly, after my conversation with Steve Staios this week, I don't think Travis and we can have that conversation, but Travis Hamonic doesn't appear to be going anywhere. Mm-hmm. So that's four guys that the three that are like up in the, I guess four that are up in the air would be Bernard Docker, Brandstrom, Chychrun, Chabot.
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing a scenario in which Thomas Chabot is traded.
It's a big deal to make.
It's a big deal. If you're going
salary's crazy.
If you're going, it's 10 million in real cash the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Like real cash, not cap hit. Real cash, and the cap hit is like, so that's not going to be palatable to other teams.
And the trade clause kicks in.
It kicks in on Monday, which means you've got to get that done in the next 48 hours. It's a complicated deal for a myriad of reasons. But I also think that Chabot, if you're talking just about pure trade value, wouldn't fetch as much as Jake Chychrun because of the contract and you 1 year left and all that. So if you're making an educated guess, the guy that I think we've talked about that to death about Chychrun and where's he going.
Yeah.
Brandstrom is fascinating to me.
Fascinating.
I am an Eric Brandstrom truther, and I don't care who knows it. I don't think he's a top four guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to play minutes in Ottawa.
Nope.
But I think on a third pairing, I don't have a problem with him. But that's just me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have a problem. His underlying numbers aren't even. They're not bad.
They're pretty solid. And, and he plays well with everyone. And Ian, what I always hammer home about Brandstrom is the versatility. He can play both
forward.
sides. Yeah, he can play forward. He can play power play. He can play PK. Now, is he an elite player at any of those positions? Probably not. But it's nice, especially with the Senators, when you have injuries on the back end, you have a kind of Swiss Army knife that you can plug anywhere. But how much value does that hold as Eric Brandstrom continues to progress? That remains to be seen.
Well, this is a question for you, Scott, because obviously you knew the upside of Brandstrom 5 years ago. We all thought this guy'd be a first unit power play, whatever. Do you think there's another team in the NHL that would look at Eric Brandstrom at his age, his development, and say, we do think he could maybe second unit power? He could get power play time, and he could be top four out of the range, or what do you think? Like
a number 5,
okay,
more than a 6-7 on
power play time, maybe somewhere,
and a number 5 and PP2. Now you're probably not that. He's probably not that on a team that's more
rebuilding team.
More
we were banging the drum on
more
San
than a
Jose
7th or 8th seed.
San Jose, Chicago, those types of places, right? Like,
I think San Jose would have made a lot of sense before they went out and got
Wallman.
Got the kid from Minnesota.
Kalen Addison.
Kalen Addison, yeah.
He's not coming back either.
He's not back. No.
So he could be a target for Ottawa if they're looking for a cheap bottom pair replacement.
Yeah, Kalen's got some mixed reviews around the league. There are people who like the same kind of think. Is he a PP2 guy, which is what he was drafted for?
Right.
And then if he's not a PP2 guy, what does he look?
He had a great rookie year, didn't he?
Yeah, he had,
He just
he had
popped
a
off.
productive
Put up
rookie
points.
year.
Yeah.
Those guys have actually, I think part of the reason the teams are prioritizing size, and I want to get to your list, but part of the reason teams are prioritizing size on the back end in a sort of revived way over the last few years is because they've seen guys like Boquist, guys like Brandstrom, guys like Ville Heinola in Winnipeg.
Even Lasky Thompson, maybe?
Yeah, the kid in Arizona, Soderstrom.
Soderstrom,
Who they took 11th overall or 10th overall. Those kids, those 5'11", 6 foot D, unless you're a dynamic power play guy, it's tough. It's tough to be more than a third pairing guy at that size. So I think teams, unless they're sure about a guy in the first round at that size, and there's a guy like Henry Muse in this draft, Ottawa 67.
Good Ottawa boy too.
Muse is going to be a second round pick, and it's I think because of some of the same concerns, like average size, very talented player, but is he a true power play, dynamic power play guy at the next level? Maybe not. And then what is he, right? So that's why you're seeing teams draft the 6'4" kids who aren't going to be power play guys, but give you that length, that skating, the physicality. Teams are prioritizing it that way.
Interesting. Okay, well, since we're talking about defensemen, you got any ones to roast us about here? Because I know we're admittedly high on EJ Emery. I just love the player.
Our list.
I don't mind the Emery at 16 at all. It's the next one, Charlie Ellick at 17. Yeah. So Charlie's.
That's
he
my
loves
guy.
him.
That's my guy.
I'll tell you where I am on
So
him.
Charlie's freak athlete. I think teams were hoping that Charlie could be the Braden Schneider, the Caden Gooley of this draft class, who were both drafted right about 17, 16, and 19 for those two guys, right? I don't think he's that, though. Like, I don't think he's going to be Caden Gooley or Braden Schneider. Super physical player, 6'3", one of the best athletes in the draft, crushed both combine testings, the on ice at the CHL game and in Buffalo. Physical, but he doesn't, his defense isn't as locked down as people realize. I think that's what he's sort of going to need to be at the next level.
Definitely.
The brain piece of it, the decision making is a real question mark for teams. He was outplayed on Canada's blue line at U18 Worlds. They played Frankie Morelli, another Ottawa 67.
Hell yeah.
Right?
They played Frankie Morelli over him. Frankie Morelli is a 5'11" kid who was playing as a shutdown D for that team.
Yeah.
They played Harrison Brunicky over him. They played a 2025 over him. So I think there's some questions about Charlie that way. And I think he might be a late 20s, early 30s guy, but I don't think anybody's talking about him.
You act like
17.
you're so much higher on him. I'm at 20 on him. So I'm still pretty high on him.
You're pretty high on him.
I like him, but again, the defense being a concern is a bit struggling.
Yeah, the other one that I love Michael Hage. I'm sure we've talked about Michael Hage a little bit.
Yep.
I mocked him, obviously.
Yep. St. Louis, I think, in our mock. Yeah, 16.
My last pick, I had to wedge him in there.
Yep.
So he's at 22. Like, I believe he's a top 15, top 16 guy in this group.
Okay.
I think he's going to be a stud at Michigan, star player all the way up.
Yeah.
Would have been a first
cool
or
moment
second
last
overall
night at the
pick.
awards.
Yes,
getting a moment.
That was really nice. I got to know him and his mom, and they've obviously been through a lot in the last 2 years. So, I'm a big fan of Michael. Who else here? I won't shred it. I like that you guys have. Teddy Stiga, 32.
Yeah, we love Teddy Stiga.
Big fan of Teddy Stiga, even though he's a 5'10" winger.
Joe Bell's going to be asking in the chat if you don't get to him. Adam Kleber at 39. You like that?
Yeah, I don't hate it. Kleber's going to go in that range.
Like, I don't think we have him. I think a little bit off of that. We have him at 36. But
I worry about his boots a little bit. Like, he's a big kid. He moves all right, but I think people see like the kid like that. They see Brandon Carlo or Chernak.
I would love, like, that's the thing with Ottawa, where it's like,
you'd love a Brandon Carlo or Chernak, right? Everybody
exactly
wants
what they need.
I
in
know.
Ottawa.
Everybody
You say you don't draft for handedness, you don't draft for position, but they need a right shot defenseman in the first two picks.
Yes,
I don't care which one, but you can't leave this draft with Hoyt. No disrespect, we love Hoyt Stanley, but he was their first pick. He was a fourth rounder.
He was fourth round.
But he was right shot. But it's like, you need a higher pick as a right shot defenseman. So that's what I'm hoping to see.
The only one at the bottom of the list, Dominic Badinka at 55.
Yeah.
Badinka's a stud. I'm high on Badinka. I have him in the 30s. I think he's going to go in the first. Like, I think he's going to get picked tonight in the first round.
Oh, wow.
After EJ Emery and Stian Solberg and
everyone's going to
Yuri
scramble.
Checker
Why are there 12 defensemen off the board already?
I think he'll be the next D picked after that group. And Badinka's a player, so him at 55, below some of the names that are in front of him.
Is that my fault or yours, Billsy?
jumped out at me.
Is that 55?
I feel like
Yeah,
I
I
glossed over Badinka for
That's
some
Billsy's
reason.
in
I'm not
mine.
sure.
Max
So I can
Plant-
compare it, and then we've got the average.
Last one here, but Max Plant at 46 is really high.
That's Pilsy's
That's
problem.
probably
That's
Yeah.
Pilsy's
I like
biggest
that.
problem. He's at 38. I got him at 52.
Yeah,
that's a big discrepancy.
You know why
Yeah.
I said though?
I think
You know who his dad is?
No,
Derek Plant.
you can't. You got to drop that guy 15
Yeah.
spots just for
I
that.
call him a do not draft. I said all due respect, but I can't have.
What do you want?
He
Chris
might-
Kunitz Jr. as well?
Yeah, he
he
eliminated the
might get
Sens.
picked. Like
Yeah.
he might get picked 80s, 90s. Like
Wow,
yeah,
okay.
He's,
Yeah, he had 2 goals that game too. I looked it up when we did his
And
profile.
you know his
Derek
first
Plant.
goal was actually Alexei Yashin put it in his own net. I think he on the draw. Someone will remember this because I was still I wasn't covering the Senators. I was at Carleton, and I remember watching the game 7. And Ottawa's up 1-0 in that game 7. I think Yashin wins the face-off and wins it so cleanly back it kind of beats Tugnut.
Okay.
And I think Derek Plant got credit for the goal. Somebody out there will remember and say, "Yeah, you're right on that." And then Plant with the one right through.
All right, do not draft.
Yeah.
You can't draft Friesen's kid,
No,
Kunitz's kid.
I mean, Travis
Plant-
Green is the head coach.
I'm going to
here,
put
like-
John Madden in the mix there too. Just what he did, and that Sammy Paulson I'll put in there. The shutdown
Travis
job
Moan.
they did. Yeah. If the Niedermeyer's had a kid, I might have to reconsider
Yeah.
just with the bloodline.
Yeah.
But no. All that to say. Well, I had a great question here, and by great question, it's from the chat as well. G-Man is all over this. Who,
G-Man.
Scott, is the most NHL ready players outside of Macklin Celebrini?
Ooh, I'm interested in this.
Brantag Nygaard, I think, will
Yeah.
play. He'll play in the SHL next year and then make the jump.
Okay.
Artem Levshunov might turn pro right away, which is extremely rare for an 18-year-old
But
D.
you were
But
saying
he
like
played
he's
1 year at Michigan State.
and 1
Yeah.
year USHL,
And 1 year
and, like,
USHL. I think he's still green enough that he could go. He should. I've actually told his agency this. They asked me sort of my opinion on what he should do. I think they're where they're at with Artie is if the team really wants him to sign, they're prepared to have him sign, even if that means playing in the AHL. I think some consistency, specifically because 1 year in the USHL, 1 year in the NCAA. Before that, he had played exclusively in Belarus, which is pond hockey, frankly. Like it's extremely low level. Some consistency, like Adam Nightingale's an excellent coach. I think he should go back, and then you can leapfrog. Like if he goes back and plays a second year at MSU, then you can leapfrog the AHL altogether.
Well, I'm just saying, what's the benefit here? Like, why rush the kid into a teenager into the AHL?
Yeah.
Like why not keep him? Like you said, another year at Michigan State. It's not like Chicago's program is ready to.
Yeah.
I think because the case to move him into the AHL, if it's Chicago tonight, and I expect it will be, the case to move him into Rockford is because he's green. You want him with really good coaches.
Yeah.
But Adam Nightingale was an assistant coach with the Detroit Red Wings and is an excellent coach at MSU. So I would lean there, even just like English, to spend some more time in school, be around people his age. I don't think there's any rush with Artie or for Chicago. So he's close. I think Sam Dickinson and Zeev Boyum are both one and done. I heard that Zeev was telling teams that he might want to turn pro and play in the NHL next year.
I mean, he's already got a championship.
He's got a national championship. He's got a 50-point season.
Yeah.
He had a 50-point
Put
season.
in perspective, Sanderson didn't even sniff that point.
No, he had a better season than Quinn Hughes, Owen Powers, Zach Werenski, Charlie McAvoy, Seth Jones, the best D, Luke Hughes, the best D that have ever played college hockey.
Wow.
Zeev Boyum had the best teenage season by a
somebody mentioned in the chat, the odds for Boyum to go 3 have dropped all the way to plus 200. Like he's the overwhelming favorite now to go 3 to Anaheim. They've got a ton of lefty and they're all young, but I mean, we've been saying, you can't draft for position. Just a couple more for you guys. Really appreciate you joining us. Everybody's already subscribed to The Athletic, and we've got Scott on his Super Bowl day. Like this is unbelievable. Really appreciate all the time and all the insight that you guys have given us. And by the way, with Artem Levshunov, I said on the podcast, and I have to stick with it, if he ends up being an Ottawa Senator, my Twitter name for the rest of the summer, maybe even longer, has to be Ross Levshunov for the rest of the time. So I don't know if I'm cheering for that as much, but I know I asked you this already when we talked, because Boyum, great playoff. Dickinson, unbelievable playoff. Parekh wins the Memorial Cup. Levshunov was just sitting at home during all this time, but it doesn't sound like Chicago cares at all.
No, and I think just the way that he played on he made them that MSU team has been in the doldrums basically for decades. They're one of the most historic programs in the history of college hockey. They've got people in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Their banners are all over their rink. They used to be the dynasty, but it was before Michigan and BC. I mean, BC's been that way, and Minnesota. Those are the teams we talk about now. But MSU was that, and already changed the way that program looks. Like
Wow.
he elevated that team. That team was a number 1 seed. They were one of the best teams in the country. They won their conference. He changed that team. So I think that lingered, even though they didn't make the Frozen Four and they didn't quite get to where they wanted to get to. And I thought they were capable of getting there. The way he led that team in plus minus, he led that team all year in points. He finished second on that team in points to Isaac Howard by 1 point, but he was a point per game D. If we weren't talking about the season that Zeev Boyum had, Artie Levshunov also had a better season than Zach Werenski and Charlie McAvoy
Wow.
and Seth Jones and Quinn Hughes at that age. Like we're talking about
He's going 3.
two of the best
No, he's going
college
2.
D ever.
Oh no,
No, sorry, boom.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I just got excited there. Is
So-
it rare that there's this many already NCAA experienced players at the top end of a draft?
A little bit. A lot of those kids, Macklin accelerated his schooling,
Yeah.
obviously. Zeev accelerated his schooling. I don't know how Artie got into
Like the top
MSU because
the
I don't
top
know what
3
his
could all.
schooling even looks like.
Yeah.
But Zane Perek actually is an interesting story. Zane Perek
Yeah.
finished at 15 before he
His-
he played a game in the OHL. Before he played his rookie season in the OHL at 16 years old, he was already done high school.
I was
which is
taking
crazy.
grade 9 classes at
Yeah.
15
And apparently
years
his
old.
brothers were the same way. Both of his brothers
Wow.
play high level hockey. They were all sort of 14.
You had that in that
15.
feature that you did on
Yeah,
him and the
yeah.
family. Like
Crazy.
it was remarkable how driven the parents were to
Yeah.
get the kids to go to school, right? Like
And he told me he was pretty close to going NCAA for that reason as well.
Oh,
to,
interesting.
to going the college route. I think Saginaw really sold him. Chris Lazary and that coaching staff there in Saginaw really sold
I mean,
him.
it worked out.
Yeah, and they've had Cole Perfetti and Pavel Mintyukov. They've done a really good job in Saginaw.
Scott, you've done a year's worth of work leading up to this point. My final question, other than I'm going to get you a prediction for 7 to finish it off, what feature are you most proud of that you did at the Athletic this year?
The Michael Hage
Nice.
story. Yeah, those stories. That's what we do our job for, is to tell those human stories. It takes a lot of trust from a family. I've reached out to them earlier in the year just to put a feeler down. I said, familiar with the story and everything that's gone on. I'd love to get you and your mom. And I went through his agency and Maddie Williams there, and they were open to it. I then met with him at the All-American game so that I could speak to him in person. Didn't want that first conversation to be over the phone. Met his mom, oddly enough, ran into his mom at the airport, and then sort of reconnected with his mom later to try to get her on the record. That's the story I'm proudest of. I'm pulling for Michael and the family.
Give us a podium then, because I want everyone to go check out all these articles, whether it's after the player gets picked or as a lead up today. So that's number 1. Couple more.
The Artie story, I went in the fall to MSU and did an embed. I did 2 stories while I was there. One was an embed with MSU. I sort of lived with their program for a few days and followed them around. And
You like that? Eh? You did that with
I love that's my
Newfoundland Brampton.
I did it with the Newfoundland Growlers,
Yeah,
the Brampton
true.
Beast.
That's
I
awesome.
did it with Marco Rossi. I lived with Marco Rossi and his billet family in a billet home with
That's
them,
awesome.
like overnight, the whole deal. Those stories. I did it with the Japanese kid, Yu Sato in Quebec. Went out to Quebec City and did an embed story with him. That's the best stuff. But the Artie story was great. Getting to know Artie and his story. It was really the first English interview that he'd done.
How is his English?
His English is actually, when I was there in October, it's a lot different than it is now. His English
Awesome.
is way better now. He can hold a conversation now. It was a bit of a struggle then, but the Artie story was probably 2. I don't know what would be 3.
All of the others were tied for number 3.
Yeah,
so go
yeah.
check them all out at the Athletic. Billsy, last one.
Ian, final question
Yes.
for me. This is a new age for the Senators. First draft with new ownership.
Yeah.
New staff. I mean, even new coaching staff. Like this is
New aura.
it's a brand new paint job on the Ottawa
Yep.
Senators. At the end of this draft, what for you would be a successful story for the Sens coming out of this draft? Or like what message or image would be the right approach for them, for the fans?
Yeah, I think, you know what? First of all, make that pick at 7. If you want to trade back a spot or 2 because it works out for you, that's fine.
Yep.
But you gotta hit on this pick, and that really matters, right? When you haven't had a pick in each of the last 2 years in the draft, you're not gonna have a pick probably 2026 because of the Dadonov thing. So to me, the message coming out of this is we're restocking. I can't remember who wrote, but somebody wrote that Ottawa had the 31st ranked prospect pool.
Yeah.
Some
Did
guy.
someone write that?
Some guy.
Someone sewered the Sens
Yeah,
prospect pipeline.
But
Who's
it's
that
like,
man?
But when you look at it and you really see that, you know what, you need to replenish that pool. And so
Shout out to Stephen Holiday though.
Oh,
Stud disher.
we're big
what
Holiday
a
guys.
sneaky good pick.
Yeah.
Hey, like he like
Ian, you know the story, right? The disher.
no.
Pills. First time we ever had him on. Pillsy.
It was an offhand comment.
You're just
I'll
teeing up your
never-
question.
Yeah, honestly, I was just like buffering in my mind trying to think of a question. I was like, Steven, so you're not really a big playmaker. You're not really a disher. And he literally he was so shy and coy with us, but he jumped in. He's like, I had
That's
like,
exactly what I
I
am.
had 65 assists last year.
I led the league in assists, and then he turns pro, and in his first 5 or 6 games, it's 8 assists, no goals. We're like, this is awesome. So
that's
he
what I
is
live with.
a disher, confirmed.
Yes. Continue.
Yeah. I don't even know what I was talking about now. Oh yeah, what a good weekend would look like.
Yes.
Like to me, it's just, can you come out, and I think the Allmark trade was a huge step. If you draft well here, you come out just inject some confidence back into the fan base, that there's stability, that there's 2 firm hands on the steering wheel, because for a long period of time it felt like this thing was going careening off a cliff.
Oh yeah.
And you didn't know where it was going, and this last season was frustrating, but at least now this is their first chance to truly run a draft, run an off season. They should have had this opportunity last year, they didn't.
Yep.
And so I would say an A+ weekend for them would be make that pick at 7 or 8, wherever if you move back, but make that pick inside the top 10, and then find that right shot D to play on opening night beside Shabbat or whoever, Chikrin, whoever you decide to hang on to. And then I think this fan base should be somewhat satiated, because I think the Allmark trade was if you told fans you only have one, Steve Staios can only do one thing in the offseason, we all would have said they got to do the goaltending.
Big time.
There was there was no second option.
No.
Yeah.
So I almost feel like most of the other things from here on in are a bit of a bonus.
Yeah,
a little
agreed.
bit.
Yep.
Well, I know you didn't ask me, Posey, but a successful weekend for us has already happened, because we're being joined by Scott Wheeler and Ian Mendes, both from the Athletic, live in person. Last question. Official prediction for the Sens at 7. We'll get you out on this.
So I said I want it to be. If I were them, I would be the pounding the table moment for me would be if Zeev's there. I think if it's not Zane or Sam, I think those are the 2 most likely.
Agreed.
On D. And if it's not those, it'll be, now I'm giving a lot of names here, but I think it'll be Teej or Beckett.
Yep.
If they take
Agreed.
a forward. I don't see them taking Berkeley Catton. I don't see them taking Consta Hellenius.
Demidov's not going to be there.
Demidov, I don't think will be there. Now, Corey had his mock out today, and
Mhm.
Corey had Demidov going 9.
But he said in
everything I've heard all week is that Demidov is 4 or 5 to Columbus and Montreal. Feels like where Demidov will land. I think Columbus likes him, even though they have Johnny Gaudreau and Kent Johnson, who are wingers kind of the same kind of style. But if I had to pick from one of those 4, Teej, Beckett, Zane, Sam, I still think Zane. I haven't gotten that. I don't know. I haven't gotten the Zane. I've talked to that agency a little bit. I haven't gotten the Zane Ottawa. Now, they haven't told me who's been all over him, but I haven't necessarily got the Zane Ottawa.
Sneaky Stevie Staios, not giving it away.
That's right.
Ian?
I'm with Scott. This is Scott's wheelhouse, right? More so than mine.
Nice.
I think Beckett.
Wheelhouse?
I think Beckett might
Wheelhouse.
also, for the record, I think Beckett might also be gone in the top 6. So,
Ooh, that's again, a lot of it's going to depend. I just want one of those premium defensemen, right? Just for me, and everything. I think it was when Scott wrote the feature on Zane and his family and the upbringing, and you just see the motivation from the kid, and the fact that I think you said he's maybe the most as talented of a defenseman as you've ever witnessed at that age. Man, I'm all about take the big swing.
That's where I'm at. Yes.
Swing go.
and that's what their pool is missing. Tyler
Blue
Cleven's
chip.
going to be a
Yes.
player, but
A lot of bottom of the lineup.
yeah,
guys,
a
right?
lot of
You can
guys you're
draft those
hoping
guys in the
you're hoping
second-
are depth.
3rd, 4th round. That's what. But the premium potential. I don't want to put the Erik Karlsson label on him, but the true game breaking defensemen, they only come around so often, right? And so if he's
They're
there,
here. Yeah.
if he's there, I guess my point is most fans should be happy that they swing big here.
Yeah.
That's all.
Zane's better defensively than people have given him credit all year too. Nobody could have watched the Memorial Cup the way he played, playing 30 minutes a night against the 3 best teams in the CHL. Nobody can watch those games and come away from them thinking this kid can't defend. Like he was excellent. He was excellent in those games at the highest stakes level against the best competition in the country as a draft eligible kid on a blue line that had other like Jordan Donovan.
Yes.
And like he was just so much better than those guys and defensively as well. So I think despite the fact that the criticism is he doesn't box out, he's not a physical defender, but the way he defends with his stick, how smart he is, I think he's going to be able to get out there on the ice enough. He's going to be able to play 20 minutes a night. I don't think he's going to be a 17 minutes a night offensive defenseman. I think you're talking about a star.
What's your coverage look like tonight?
I'll just have pick by pick analysis of the 32 picks and then best players available for day 2.
And he's also going to do draft grades.
Oh yeah.
Winners and losers.
Going to do winners and
course.
losers.
Yeah, because the draft is won and lost instantly. It's not
But
5
you
years
do that
down the
right
road.
like
or
those grades come out tonight, right?
Yeah, they'll be out
Yeah.
ideally within 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah, and we'll be clicking on within 21 minutes.
Yeah. I don't actually love I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past. I don't love the winners and losers headline, but Corey does grades. I've got to do like
yeah,
one
that's
of
what
us
people are
has-
looking for. As soon as the
and
draft is
frankly,
over.
it's the same thing. Me and Corey are doing the same thing with a different name.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Well, I'm gonna be going to our rankings, and whoever has who the Sens pick the highest, that's whose report I'm gonna read. Ian Mendes, Scott Wheeler with The Athletic. Thank you so much for being here. Seems like the internet held up great. Really appreciate everyone for joining us. We'll have an immediate reaction episode after. Make sure you're following all these guys, subscribing on The Athletic. They do great work, and they'll have boots on the ground analysis from Vegas as well. So thanks for doing this, fellas.
Thanks for having us.
cheers, guys.
Thank you.
All right. This has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.